Right now, across the continental United States, a massive atmospheric shift is underway. The Valentine's Day weekend of 2025 will not be remembered for romance. It will be remembered for rain, for flooding, for snow measured in feet, and for a weather pattern so unstable that what begins as unseasonable warmth will collapse into winter's final stand. This is not a typical February storm. This is a multi-day event that will touch nearly every American. And what makes it even more remarkable is what comes after. Because once this system passes, the entire weather regime governing North America is about to flip. Twice. Let's begin with what's happening right now, at this very moment. A low-pressure system is organizing itself over the Pacific Northwest. On satellite imagery, you can see the signature swirl of clouds, the telltale sign of atmospheric energy gathering strength. But this is not just one storm. It's a procession, a convoy of disturbances lined up across the Pacific Ocean like dominoes waiting to fall. The jet stream, that river of wind high in the atmosphere that steers our weather, has positioned itself in a way that will funnel these systems directly into the western United States. One after another, relentlessly, and each one will carry moisture, tremendous amounts of moisture, pulled from the tropical Pacific and delivered to a continent that is already saturated from previous storms. The first signs are already visible. Rain is beginning to fall along the coasts of Washington and Oregon. Not the gentle mist that region is famous for, but heavy, driving rain. The kind that overwhelms storm drains and turns roadways into rivers. Within hours, rainfall rates will intensify. Forecasters are predicting 3 to 6 inches of rain across lower elevations of the Pacific Northwest through Valentine's Day weekend. In the mountains, where temperatures drop below freezing, this moisture will fall as snow. Heavy, wet, dense snow. The Cascades will see 1 to 3 feet. The Sierra Nevada range in California could receive even more, with some peaks accumulating 4 feet or higher. Ski resorts will celebrate. Highway departments will struggle. Interstate 80, the main artery connecting California to Nevada, will likely face closures. Chain requirements at minimum. This is mountain snow on a scale that can isolate communities and trap travelers. But the storm system doesn't stop at the Rockies. This is where the meteorological story becomes more complex and more dangerous. As this weather disturbance moves inland, it will encounter a warm air mass that has surged northward from the Gulf of Mexico. This collision, this meeting of Pacific moisture and Gulf warmth, will create explosive atmospheric conditions over the central United States. The calendar says February. The thermometer will say April. Cities from Texas to the Great Lakes will experience temperatures 15 to 25 degrees above normal. Dallas could touch 80 degrees. Chicago might see the mid-50s. This unseasonable warmth is not a gift. It is fuel. Warm air holds more moisture. Warm air creates instability. And when unstable air is forced to rise rapidly, you get thunderstorms. Valentine's Day evening, as couples make dinner reservations and exchange gifts, a line of thunderstorms will be erupting across the plains. These will not be ordinary February thunderstorms. We're talking about storms with heavy rain rates, frequent lightning, and possibly even severe weather. The Storm Prediction Center has already highlighted areas from eastern Kansas through Missouri and into Arkansas as zones of concern. Damaging winds are possible. Isolated tornadoes cannot be ruled out. In February, this is the kind of atmospheric setup that happens when seasons collide, when winter refuses to release its grip while spring tries to arrive early. The rain will be relentless. Forecast models are showing widespread rainfall totals of 2 to 4 inches across the Midwest and Ohio Valley. Some areas, particularly where thunderstorms train over the same locations repeatedly, could see 5 inches or more. This is flooding rain. Rivers that are already running high from snowmelt will rise further. Flash flooding will occur in urban areas where pavement prevents water from soaking into the ground. Basements will flood. Roads will close. The National Weather Service will issue flood warnings that stretch across multiple states. This is the kind of rain event that makes national news, not because of wind speed or tornado counts, but because of sheer volume. Water everywhere, overwhelming communities that thought they were done with winter's worst. Now, here's where the story takes its first major turn. By the middle of next week, this warm, stormy pattern will begin to break down. The jet stream, which had been positioned to allow warm Gulf air to flood northward, will shift. It will buckle. It will reorient itself into a pattern that meteorologists call progressive. Systems will begin moving faster, tracking from west to east with more regularity. And crucially, the door will open for Arctic air to spill southward once again. The warmth that made February feel like spring will evaporate. Temperatures will crash. And behind the crash, winter will return with a vengeance. This is not speculation. This is what the forecast models are showing with increasing confidence. By the third week of February, a pattern change will bring below normal temperatures back to much of the eastern United States. The cold won't be record-breaking, but it will be a shock to the system after days of unusual warmth. Daytime highs that were in the 60s will struggle to reach the 30s. Morning lows will dip into the teens and 20s. And with this cold air in place, any storm systems that develop will have the potential to bring snow. Meaningful snow, accumulating snow, the kind of snow that could finally give snow lovers in the mid-Atlantic and Northeast the winter storm they've been waiting for. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Before that happens, we have to get through the Valentine's Day storm complex. And there's one more element to discuss. One more piece of this atmospheric puzzle that makes this event particularly noteworthy. The Pacific storm systems aren't just bringing rain and snow. They're bringing wind. Strong, damaging wind. As these low-pressure systems intensify, the difference in pressure between the storm center and surrounding areas will create powerful pressure gradients. Wind is simply air moving from high pressure to low pressure, and when that difference is large, the wind screams. Coastal areas of the Pacific Northwest should prepare for wind gusts of 50 to 70 miles per hour. Trees will fall. Power lines will come down. Outages are likely. Ferry services will be disrupted. High-profile vehicles will struggle on bridges and exposed roadways. This is the kind of wind that makes national news, that leads evening broadcasts, that prompts emergency managers to open warming shelters for those who lose electricity. And it's not just the coast. As these systems move inland, they'll bring gusty winds to the Intermountain West, the Rockies, and eventually the plains. Wind advisories and high wind warnings will stretch across thousands of miles. Think about the cascading impacts. Rain that causes flooding also makes soil saturated and heavy. Wind that might normally spare a healthy tree can topple one whose roots are waterlogged. Power outages caused by falling trees can last for days when repair crews are dealing with flooded roads and difficult access. This is how weather events become disasters. Not through one single extreme factor, but through multiple compounding problems that strain infrastructure and emergency services beyond their limits. Meanwhile, the atmospheric river pattern that's feeding the storm convoy shows no sign of shutting off immediately. An atmospheric river is exactly what it sounds like. A long, narrow corridor of concentrated moisture in the atmosphere that flows like a river through the sky. When one of these sets up and points at the west coast, it can deliver days of heavy precipitation. The current pattern shows multiple atmospheric river events possible through the rest of February. This Valentine's Day storm is just the beginning. The Pacific Northwest and Northern California could be looking at a persistently wet pattern for weeks. Snowpack in the mountains will grow. Reservoirs will fill, but soil will saturate. Hillsides will become unstable. Mudslides and debris flows become the concern, especially in areas recently burned by wildfires where vegetation that normally holds soil in place is gone. Now let's talk about what all of this means for the eastern half of the country in the days following the Valentine's Day event. As the warm sector exits and cooler air begins filtering in, we'll see a transition zone. A battleground where warm and cold air masses clash. This is prime real estate for additional storm development. A secondary low-pressure system could form along the frontal boundary that separates these air masses. If this happens, and current models suggest it might, the East Coast could see its own significant weather event by mid to late next week. Heavy rain for some, a wintry mix for others. Snow for areas that have seen very little this season. The details are still uncertain, but the pattern supports it. The ingredients are there. What's driving all of this? Why is February 2025 shaping up to be such an active weather month? Part of the answer lies in the larger climate patterns at play. The El Niño Southern Oscillation, that periodic warming and cooling of Pacific Ocean waters, has been in a neutral phase, neither strongly El Niño nor La Niña. This neutral state can sometimes lead to more chaotic, harder-to-predict weather patterns. The polar vortex, that area of low pressure and cold air that normally sits over the Arctic, has been relatively stable but is showing signs of potential disruption. When the polar vortex weakens or displaces, Arctic air can spill southward into lower latitudes. We might be seeing the early stages of such an event, which would explain the dramatic temperature swings forecast for late February. There's also the matter of the Madden-Julian Oscillation, a tropical atmospheric phenomenon that influences weather patterns globally. Recent indications suggest it's moving into a phase that favors enhanced storminess over the Pacific and North America. These large-scale climate drivers don't determine day-to-day weather, but they set the stage. They load the dice. They make certain patterns more likely. And right now, everything is aligned for an active, volatile, and potentially dangerous weather pattern across the United States. For those in the path of this Valentine's Day storm system, preparation is essential. If you're in the Pacific Northwest or Northern California, secure outdoor objects that could become projectiles in high winds. Charge your devices in case of power outages. Have flashlights, batteries, and a battery-powered radio available. If you're planning mountain travel, check road conditions obsessively and be prepared to change plans. Chains, shovels, extra food, water, and warm clothing in your vehicle are not suggestions. They're requirements. People get stranded every year because they underestimate mountain weather. If you're in the central United States where heavy rain and thunderstorms are forecast, know your flood risk. Do you live in a flood-prone area? Is your home in a low-lying zone? Do you have a plan to move to higher ground if needed? Never drive through flooded roadways. Turn around, don't drown. That slogan exists because every year, people die attempting to cross water-covered roads, not realizing how deep the water is or how strong the current has become. 6 inches of moving water can knock an adult off their feet. 12 inches can float most vehicles. For those anticipating the pattern flip and potential late February snow, start thinking about snow removal equipment now. If you haven't used your snow blower this season, now's the time to test it. Make sure you have ice melt or sand available. If you're elderly or have mobility challenges, arrange for someone who can help clear walkways. Winter weather injuries spike when people are caught unprepared and rush to clear snow without proper equipment or physical conditioning. But beyond the immediate preparations, there's something bigger happening here. Something worth paying attention to even if this particular storm doesn't directly impact you. We are watching the atmosphere reorganize itself. The pattern that dominated January, that kept much of the country relatively mild and snow-free, is breaking down. What replaces it is still being determined, but early indications suggest a return to more classic winter weather for the northern tier, more active storm tracks, and temperature swings that will test infrastructure and planning. Climate scientists have long predicted that a warming world doesn't mean every place gets warmer all the time. It means more energy in the atmospheric system, more fuel for extremes, warmer warm spells, potentially colder cold snaps when Arctic air does break loose, more intense precipitation events, whether rain or snow, because warmer air holds more moisture. What we're seeing this February could be a textbook example of this new normal. Extreme warmth followed by rapid cooling. Heavy precipitation falling in shorter time periods. Storm systems that intensify rapidly and impact large geographic areas. The Valentine's Day storm system of 2025 will pass. The rain will end. The snow will stop falling. Floodwaters will recede. Power will be restored. But the pattern that created it, that active, volatile atmospheric setup, may persist for weeks. Late February could bring additional storms. March, historically one of the snowiest months in many northern areas, could live up to its reputation this year. Winter is not finished. Not by a long shot. And so we watch. We prepare. We adapt. Because weather is not something that happens to us passively. It's something we navigate, something we respect, something we prepare for. The atmosphere doesn't care about our plans or our calendars. It follows physics, thermodynamics, the eternal dance between heat and cold, moisture and dryness, stability, and chaos. Our job is to pay attention, to heed warnings, to make smart decisions based on the best available information. Right now, that information tells us that Valentine's Day weekend will be anything but romantic for large portions of the United States. It tells us that rain will fall in amounts that will cause flooding, that snow will pile up in the mountains to depths that will close roads and test avalanche slopes, that wind will howl along the coast and inland, toppling trees and cutting power, that thunderstorms will rumble across the plains when they should be quiet, and that after all this, the pattern will flip, temperatures will drop, and winter will return. This is the story unfolding right now. This is the weather event of mid-February 2025. Stay alert, stay informed, and stay safe, because the atmosphere is speaking, and it's telling us to pay attention.